Airing on Asheville FM 103.3 LPFM in Asheville, this is The Final Straw Radio, a weekly anarchist and anti-authoritarian broadcasts and podcast emanating out of occupied Chalagi land in southern Appalachia. We bring you voices and perspectives from projects and struggles all around the world, and you can find our archives, transcripts, ways to follow us and support us at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org. This week, we're sharing an interview with Courtney of the Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee and Rock, Communications Bridge for Jailhouse Lawyers Speak and residential manager at the JLS Housing Center, who are both going to speak about the Jailhouse Lawyers Speak call for shut-'em-down strikes inside and outside of prisons in December of 2024. We talk about abolitionism, the organizing that JLS is doing, including that transitional housing project, and other topics. Then you'll hear Monsour Owolabi, incarcerated New African political prisoner in the Ferguson Unit of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice System, sharing some perspectives on inside-outside collaboration, the role of isolation in prisons as counter-insurgency, and also the importance of transitional housing projects. Monsour has been involved in Prison Lives Matter. The website texasletters.org has published some of his writings, and also supporters have an Instagram that's at Free Monsour Owolabi. And Monsour was also responsible for an essay that went up on It's Going Down not that long ago called Drawing Connections from the Palestinian Liberation Struggle to American Prisons. Just as a note, by putting these two segments together, The Final Straw is not proposing any organizational overlap between Mr Owolabi and Jailhouse Lawyers Speak. Big shout out to Marylin's children for getting it done. Keep up the great work.
My name is Courtney. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm with Millions for Prisoners New Mexico, as well as the Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee.
And hi, aloha, my name is Rock. I'm currently serving as the JLS Communications Bridge, as well as the residential manager at the JLS Housing Center. I have a long history of serving at the side of my late great-godfather, Dr. Mutulu Shakur, rest in power, and my pronouns are she and her.
That's awesome. Thanks a lot, both of you, for being here in this conversation, and much respect to Dr. Shakur. His loss is felt, for sure. So we're here to speak about the call by Jailhouse Lawyers Speak for a strike, a prison strike, in December from the 6th to the 13th of 2024. Since members of our audience, because we're playing over the radio and also someone might just be coming across this conversation for the first time, they may not be familiar with Jailhouse Lawyers Speak as a formation or even the concept of jailhouse lawyering. Could you all talk a bit about that formation, about its aims, programs, and activities?
Yeah, sure. So Jailhouse Lawyers Speak is a collective of imprisoned individuals, arguably the largest prisoner-led collective in the U.S., fighting for prisoners' human rights as a whole, and standing firm on prison abolition. Members make up autonomous collectives in the states across the country, and they have all independently studied law to champion civil rights and human rights causes. I can say that their aim being to challenge the injustices in the judicial system, and push for abolition in a process that you hear them refer to as dismantling the prison industrial slave complex. And to the next part, the other part, being a jailhouse lawyer refers to the practice of people in prison providing legal assistance for themselves and or others who are also imprisoned. They organize actions and programs inside, such as legal research, filing grievances, and advocating for policy changes both inside and outside prison walls. So, they do a large number of things simultaneously to advocate for themselves and other prisoners. Jailhouse Lawyers Speak pushes a number of issues, again, such as like prison conditions, mass incarceration, the 13th Amendment, and all things aligned with abolition, as well as holding direct action demos like the 2021 Shut 'em Down demonstrations and the upcoming 2024 demonstrations. JLS also has various initiatives and seasonal projects, such as the Paralegal Program, the International Law Project, the Seasonal Joy Project, and they have a bunch of JLS committees, like the Political Prisoners Freedom Committee And at the forefront of their projects right now is the JLS Housing Center, which you can go to jlshousingcenter.com and take a deeper look into the housing center that they've opened up for women activists and women jailhouse lawyers that are being released and need housing and like vital documents and a lot more. So you can go to jlshousingcenter.com to see about that project that they're pushing out right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a lot. So clearly, and with your position as a bridge, like a communications bridge for JLS, there, I guess, can you talk a little bit about the inside-outside organizing? Because there are obviously like people on the outside who are coordinating with and standing in solidarity and kind of amplifying the voices, and like the role of leadership of people on the inside or recently out of incarceration, directing, I guess, the actions and the strategies and tactics of JLS.
Yeah, sure. So I guess it's important to note that there's a number of JLS liaisons on the outside that help facilitate different calls to actions. For me, a lot of my work is to sit in on some of the notes that are taken after the JLS Central Committee meetings. And I guess the most important thing is that my job is not to interpret what they're saying, but to literally just be like the vessel of what they're saying to the outside. And a lot of their messages and what they're doing can be seen on their social media accounts, which is all inside driven. So I facilitate a lot of the communication between the different outside organizations. And for example, like Courtney with iWalk and some of the other ones. And I'll, take the messages that I get from the Central Committee of Jailhouse Lawyers Speak and just facilitate and communicate that with the outside organizations that I know that they've trusted and worked with over, a long period of time.
Just as a sort of follow-up, like to get a little bit more on the housing center, I know that you directed listeners to the website for it. That's big, like providing post-release housing for like formerly incarcerated people. Like, could you talk about like just that in and of itself, let alone also helping to like, I would imagine that a lot of people, people obviously can do as they want when they get released. Like they have like life to deal with. They've got relationships to figure out. They've got surviving under white supremacist capitalism, but also providing an opportunity, like I imagine as kind of like providing an opportunity for like not only stability to folks that are going to be destabilized when they're released, but also like continuing to allow people place to like plug into movement work and sort of a continuity. I keep coming back to that word, but like a continuity of the activism that they were engaged with on the inside. But can you talk a little bit about like what the role of the housing center is?
Oh yeah, it absolutely. It's like a massive project, right? And we had this idea of providing housing for people being released, women specifically, for the first JLS housing center, and the concept of it is incredible. But then when you start to apply, right, you're hands on, you're like, whoa, like there's so many arms and legs to this thing that, I'm proud to say that we've been able to kind of tackle head on. And it's been 2021. So about 3 years now from just the ideation process to the actual, like we're actually housing people now. So what started as just sort of like the idea of providing housing and safe housing. I think so many of the traditional reentry homes sometimes they lack like a sense of peace of mind, because you're released after X amount of years and you're kind of thrown back into the hustle and bustle of everyday life, right? And just the simple things like obtaining your birth certificate, social security card, and your vital records. That in and of itself tends to be like a huge obstacle for people to be able to get that done within a matter of days. And then in order to, secure a job or even to, whatever it is that you need to do in order to kind of come back into the community and start providing for yourself and or your family. So that was like the first part, was to just secure a safe home that had a sense of peace. So we're more remote. It's more rural, which is why we chose to kind of go further out than kind of more in the urban population, which makes sense to be more, in a metropolitan urban place, because you have more access to public transportation and jobs and that sort of thing. But you miss that peace of mind, and that's really what we were kind of striving for. And then the second part is, which is the biggest part, is to absolutely connect them with organizations on the outside who are active and organizing, because the residents that we take on, one of the requirements is for them to have a history of activism and or being jailhouse lawyers, some form of giving back and helping the cause and the movement. That's one of, the requirements for our non-traditional housing center. So just those two pieces alone have been massive for us to sort of piece together and make sure that there's a strong foundation when they come out, and they can be reconnected with people, like Courtney and IWalk and a lot of the other organizations as well. Because, JLS really wants to continue to fuel the movement and the momentum as it, it comes in waves. And there's just so much that the people who are coming out of prison can offer, and they have so much energy, and they're ready to kind of hit the ground running. So we want to, one, make sure that we have a safe place for them to just sleep at night. And then the essentials, food, water, right? The resources that we need in order to just be okay on a day-to-day basis. And then also helping filter them into a lot of the orgs out here who are active. And then kind of on the back end of that a lot of people don't see is what it took in order to obtain this home. We spent months actually searching for a house that would accommodate what we were looking for, which was, some land, enough rooms where we're not just stacking people on top of each other, but it actually is like a home kind of feeling. And we've done huge improvements and renovations, new roofs and flooring and painting and appliances, and I can go on and on and on. We, in the last 2 to 3 years, we've done more than I think what the average homeowner would do to their home within a 5 to 10 year span. So that's just sort of a snapshot into the housing center right now.
Yeah, and just to also mention that it's notable that it's specifically a women's facility, and it feels to me like a lot of conversations in the U.S. around incarceration focus on people in men's facilities and whether they identify as men or not, and because just numbers wise, that's a much larger part of the prison population. However, people going into women's facilities have been increasing at a sharper rate than any other proportion, particularly Black women, over the last decade. And so it's really great to see that JLS is making this investment in something that it feels like at times movements that are focused on prisons don't really speak about, this part that's half of the total population. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That definitely makes sense. And, I know JLS at one point was really hoping to grow their membership within the women's prisons. And as they build on that, and that's taking more time, this is a great way for them to also, like you said, support women in the movement as a whole as well.
Courtney, you've been on the show before a couple of years back talking about Millions for Prisoners New Mexico and also IWalk. And I wonder if you could talk for any listeners that don't know about IWalk. It's been around for a while, but if you could talk about the group and the model, both at at a local level as well as because you're one of the media spokespeople, like at a national level, like how it coordinates?
Yeah. So we at the Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee are prisoner-led, and we're a section of the Industrial Workers of the World, which is a labor union. And our struggles are very much intertwined in abolition and the end to prison slavery, along with bringing in and looping in allies, community members from the outside, and again, amplifying the voices of people who are most proximal to state violence and the human rights abuses that are going on in prisons and jails all over the United States, or the so-called United States, and throughout the world. We do recognize that we are on occupied territories that were occupied through colonization and white supremacy, and that the prison industrial complex is a direct reflection of those systems. We have members inside, we have members outside. We welcome community members who have been impacted by state violence, whose communities have been restructured because of police violence, because of the extraction of our communities into prisons and jails to be used as a source of labor, to be abused, to be traumatized for the rest of their lives. It impacts us generationally. A lot of our communities have been impacted by state violence, and we're seeing it amp up, of course. So it is a prisoner-led section of the IWW, and we understand that it's going to take a mass movement inside and out to abolish prison slavery. We have folks that are earning anywhere from nothing to pennies on the dollar to perform labor in conditions that are not being regulated, that are not being seen. A lot of what happens in prisons is behind closed doors, behind concrete walls, and the people who are most proximal to it are the most important voices to lift up, and their families. And they are on the front lines of wage slavery and forced slave labor. Refusal to work when you're in prison results in retaliation. It can result in, being exposed to solitary confinement, and it's just part of the mechanism of exploitation. The Industrial Workers of the World Union has consciously grasped the importance of organizing people who are in prison so they can directly challenge prison slavery, the conditions that they face, and the system itself, so that they can break the cycles of criminalization, exploitation, state-sponsored divisions of our working class. And the prison environment and culture itself is a melting pot of capitalistic and exploitative tactics and all forms of oppression. And so we challenge these poisons in prisons, institutions, and we're trying to build working class solidarity. And I will talk about why that's important. I also wanted to cover that Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee has a national structure, but there's also local structures where locals can form IWOC chapters where they can approach local struggles. But we do stand together as a national unit and try to help each other through our struggles, whether it be, each state is different, each group's struggles are different. And so we try to support and uplift whether folks are trying to fight for, legislative moves, trying to improve people's lives in the moment, even though, the ultimate goal is abolition of these systems so that we don't have to see the future of these systems existing because they have caused so much harm to our people. But also having a national structure and other organizations, other autonomous actors, people who are wanting to dismantle oppression, it's all inclusive. And I did want to touch on why working class solidarity is so important in abolition and how it intertwines with the struggles to support Palestinian liberation. Right now, we're seeing the Supreme Court set to make a decision on the Grants Pass versus Johnson case this summer. This is coming up. We're seeing increased criminalization of our unhoused communities locally, all over the country. And the decision is promising to warehouse and exploit our most vulnerable community members who are even more at risk of brutalization by police, and their voices are unheard and unseen. We're prepared to see even more of a chokehold on human rights with the criminalization of our unhoused community members, so many who are struggling with a lot of things, and we're seeing struggles with bodily autonomy being criminalized. Queer and trans people are being criminalized, having to flee from states where their existence is under attack. Of course, meanwhile, the working class is in a chokehold with economic opportunities dwindling. We're seeing mass layoffs, automation of jobs with the use of AI. I'm seeing this at my day job, just basic entry level work that I do, trying to be squeezed out from my workplace. The value of college education is falling exponentially. So many folks are at get nothing but debt. So many folks like myself, trying to raise up from poverty, get nothing but debt. We're even more poor. The cost of rent, basic necessities, it's skyrocketing. Gentrification is displacing entire communities and people while our communities are being funneled into the prison system. And this is causing the unhoused population to explode. The state is obviously gearing up for confrontations with civilians in multi-million-dollar cop cities, such as the facility in Atlanta in the Weelaunee Forest, which was a repurposed prison farm that was abandoned in 1995. We're already seeing more militarization of police, with state violence spilling into universities all over the country and all over the world. System-impacted communities were born and raised with heavy police presence anyway. State violence is a part of our life. It's a part of the air we breathe, and it's part of what our parents and grandparents experienced. Indigenous, Black, and Brown folks have endured the legacy of colonization and slavery for generation after generation. And police and prisons, we know, were built as part of the legacy of slavery and the exploitation of labor of warehoused community members who are violently snatched up off the streets, killed, or just taken in. And these very institutions are dilapidated, understaffed, and they're the source of countless violations to basic human rights under the United Nations Mandela principles. And, it's the source of lifelong generational trauma that our communities have been absorbing. But when you see this state violence spilling over into institutions of higher learning, we saw it in the 60s and 70s. Here at the University of New Mexico, 11 people were bayoneted when the National Guard was called in. So we're seeing this on a massive scale in broad daylight all over the place in the so-called US, captured from so many angles, because now as a society, we all have technology. We're all equipped with tools to record and document the abuse by the state. We're seeing a clear indication that we're continuing to slip into fascism. The state is deciding to use force on young people speaking out on genocide because the state is determined to fund that genocide, and it is going to move forward with it no matter what. The state-sponsored media is the arm of the state, and it's going to toe that line. University students all over the world are rising to the occasion to stand their ground, to demand that schools disclose and divest from genocide. And Palestine is the world's largest open-air jail. It's home to 1.8 million people, 2/3 of whom are under 25 years old. This Monday reached a death toll of 35,091, including 15,103 children and 9,961 women. It's our duty to stand with students who are demanding an end to the atrocities being live streamed for all eyes to see. I also saw that, according to the AP, Associated Press, nearly 2,900 people have been arrested at 57 colleges and universities. Now that students have had the chance to have a glimpse into the conditions that are going on in U.S. jails, at this time, this is the time for them to share their experiences, to record those experiences in your mind. 2,900 glimpses so far into the struggle facing system-impacted folks. Just a glimpse, but it's there. Some people spend their entire lifetimes Entire families spend lifetime after lifetime without the opportunity for freedom, without the opportunity for adequate sunlight, nutritious food, compassion, any shred of basic human rights, sitting in a concrete cage. And I've been seeing jail support efforts by community, both here in Tiwa territories, here in so-called Albuquerque, New Mexico. And that kind of mutual aid, I feel, needs to spread unhindered for all of our comrades that are impacted, all of our people, all of our communities that are impacted. I want to see this grow. The solidarity with our comrades behind the wall who risk everything to stand up and fight against oppression and state repression and violence, this is where that solidarity stands. The state has been very busy gearing up for civil uprisings. They've put enormous budget creating these cop cities, such as the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center. In all but 3 states, we have these types of centers. And the major increase in activity started after the uprisings of 2020. According to The Guardian, the student-led uprisings at Emory University are actually also demanding disclosure and divestment from Israel. In addition, they're also calling for disclosure and divestment from the $109 million facility in Atlanta. Atlanta police trained in Israel with the IDF, and the tactics of oppression used on Palestinian relatives are being used in our communities. We see tanks, we see all of that, militarized police all over the place. And, according to isyourlifebetter.net, the cost for 55 of the 69 projects confirmed of these cop cities range around $1 million to $415 million, and a range in size with larger facilities, including 366,000 square feet on 146 acres of land, to a proposed site that's 800 acres. These are cities in which they are using militarized police to practice mass arrests, mass confrontations with the people, because things are crumbling. And, this should all solidify the solidarity among working class, our families and communities behind enemy lines in prisons and jails, unhoused folks, all marginalized identities. Our struggles are intertwined with the struggles of our Palestinian relatives. Our fights, our victories, our future are also intertwined. And, this is where we stand. We do deserve better. And I just wanted to lift how these struggles all intertwine, how we can build mass movements by realizing that we must stand with one another. Mutual aid, community care. We take care of one another. We protect one another. We don't need these systems. Abolition is absolutely possible, and it is absolutely our future. And that's what I wanted to say.
So over the last decade, formations like JLS have worked and played a part, helped coordinate, help organize prisoner strikes across facilities that have been backed by outside solidarity. And these inside strikes have included work stoppages, commissary boycotts, and the outside solidarity has included contacting officials, talking in the media, showing up at places of incarceration or the sites of contractors who profit off of the prison industries. I wonder if y'all could talk a little bit about mass incarceration and what governments and companies are profiting from it.
The profiteering, we know that the incarcerated people are legally slaves, as per the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery and involuntary servitude except as punishment for a crime. People behind the walls are legally slaves. Billions are made annually off the backs of people who are behind the walls. The privatized services like healthcare, food, phone calls, they're outrageously priced. Access to mail is outrageously, priced. People have to pay for everything that they have. And it's at a very inflated rate. And the government spends as much as an elite college tuition per person to keep each person incarcerated, but it doesn't make communities safer. It doesn't reduce crime. People are paid pennies on an hour, pennies on the dollar, or sometimes nothing. People are, during the pandemic, performing essential work needed to help run the prisons. When, people mopping up blood, from state violence that was enacted on maybe somebody in a cell close to them. It's subcontracting with private corporations. Some are working in, clothing, textile, call centers, everything that you can think of. And, we constantly are working with folks to research, members of the academic world, to try to contribute to researching the connections. But it is big business. Keeping people in prisons is profitable, and all of the beds must stay full. Even if people are just warehoused and they don't have the opportunity to actually work prison jobs, quote unquote, if it's not the site for that, which is kind of what the situation is in New Mexico. We do a lot of warehousing in remote areas. It still stands to profit. And there's really no minimum wage that people can make. Few safety regulations. Way up to 80% of wages can be withheld by prison officials. And as workers, people who are incarcerated should be guaranteed the same protections and wages as other workers. It would economically change the situation from being as extractive as it is from families and communities. Ultimately, we feel that we want to abolish prison slavery. We don't feel like any of it corrects anything. So it's entirely exploitative.
Piggybacking off of everything that was said, I also wanted to note that when boycotting commissary and the prison labor, for people on the inside too, just having an act of rebellious behavior that people in prison are saying they won't be pacified by commissary, and it being a small symbolic gesture that recognizes the objective for companies to exploit people in prison and their families on the outside for money. And I wanted to also list a few of the big businesses that a lot of people are familiar with that support prison labor. A lot of the ones that we know of are Victoria's Secret, Walmart, McDonald's, JCPenney's, which I think a lot of them have shut down. But these are just a few examples that highlight the widespread use of prison labor. And so I know that JLS is working on kind of putting together like a mass list of just for people to become more aware and conscious of these big corporations that use prison labor as well.
So as has been mentioned, JLS has helped to coordinate past strikes along with other formations in the U.S. And oftentimes these have been called for the time around Black August, the assassination of George Jackson, and the anniversary of the Attica uprising. So the new one is in mid-December. I wonder if y'all could talk about the significance of the dates for this year's strikes, and is it scheduled somehow in relation to the national election season and avoiding that, or something else?
Yeah. So this year's Shut 'em Down demo from December 6th through December 13th, 2024 is a call to action against mass imprisonment and all the profiteering that comes along with it. And the Shut 'em Down dates are set such to avoid the national election season, because the election season often co-opts social justice movements and takes eyes away from what really needs to be uplifted, which is the abolition of exploitative practices in the prison and jail system, as well as the abolition of the entire system in itself.
So in recent years, some abolitionists have expressed concerns that the focus around organizing on the 13th Amendment and its state-level equivalent sets kind of a low non-abolitionist horizon. Which is ironic in some ways, but I guess the work being done by that idea is that the state, in the creation of the 13th Amendment, simply redefined circumstances to allow for the incarceration, the control, the extraction of labor, and the social death of many of the same portions of the population inside of its borders that prior to the abolition of slavery there was a systematized method of doing those same things. So I wonder if you all could talk about that, or what you know about that debate around the 13th Amendment as the focus of the strike, and if there's validity to that, if that maybe sets a good measure of people just being attentive of recuperation, or the way that politicians will, co-opt our struggles or the struggles and just rename something, slavery, rename it prison, rename it Jim Crow or Black Codes, if that makes sense.
Sure. So this was like one of the things that I think is important, that we sort of amplify the voices of Jailhouse Lawyers Speak members. And so when talking to them before, our interview, they wanted to send this sort of a statement, just short, and in the debate about the 13th Amendment. So what they sent was, regarding the 13th Amendment debate in our movement, legalized slavery has always been a focus of slavery abolition, and how slavery abolition makes up the foundation of abolition. And JLS acknowledges the concerns of some abolitionists, while some focus on the amendment's loopholes that allow forced labor. Others see it as a tactical target to dismantle the prison industrial slave complex. And just that JLS embraces diverse perspectives within the network entirely.
Cool. That's great. Thank you. So Sundiata Jawanza is an incarcerated New African abolitionist and human rights activist in South Carolina who's been publicly affiliated with Jailhouse Lawyers Speak, has faced repression, and was denied an attempt at parole last year. Are there any other JLS affiliates with support campaigns that we can speak about, or do you have anything to say about Mr. Jawanza's struggle?
Right now, there are not other public campaigns to support. It's important to note that political prisoner Sundiata Jawanza has gone public after being identified by state agents as an inside organizer, and like you said, who faces repression and has been denied parole due to his national organizing efforts. And right now, due to his concern and primary focus on being released, he's not currently organizing. However, with that said, we absolutely urge people to support Sundiata's freedom campaign. And you can actually find ways to support and join his fight for freedom by going to sundiatajawanza.com, as well as thejerichomovement.com.
So I guess getting back to the call for the strike, can you talk about some of the ways that listeners can get involved to educate, agitate, and organize on the outside to support folks on the inside for this?
Yeah. So to get involved with the Shut 'em Down demonstrations, listeners can educate themselves about the 13th and the prison industrial slave complex, agitate by organizing solidarity events and actions outside prisons and jails, organize by spreading the word and supporting prisoners facing repression, be on the lookout for and support JLS activities during the demonstrations and during Black August, because that still is something that we uplift, and visit the Shut 'em Down website for specific instructions. We also ask that you amplify your support and solidarity to protect folks that are on the front lines. We know that past actions have seen repression from authorities, including lockdowns, retaliation, loss of privileges, such as reaching out to family, against folks who are participating. It's really important that all eyes be directed to prisons and jails across the so-called U.S. That is also very important. Spreading the word, sharing info through trusted networks, phone calls with folks on the inside, newsletters, getting inside, kiosk messaging, secure apps and social media. Encourage everyone you know to spread the word. and follow JLS and also IWOC for any updates and ways to get involved. And we just want to let people know as well that just remember that our struggle is not about prison reform. It's about abolition. We seek to dismantle the systems of oppression and build a better society for everyone. And the people will rise up against colonialism and its legacy of white supremacy culture. I feel that our communities are resilient, ready to fight with every breath that we take for a world without police and prisons, where our needs are met, where we aren't exploited for our labor and robbed of our meaning in lives. And yeah, we do deserve a better world, and we will build this up. And our folks and comrades who are risking everything, they deserve to have our support and for us to have our eyes on their struggles and work to amplify their struggles.
So I also wanted to touch a little bit on the 13th Amendment and, and sort of the setting a low horizon. So when it comes to the shut them down demonstrations too, it's great to think about it as sort of the overarching platform for abolition as a whole. And so, whether you're pinpointing specific issues like the 13th Amendment or prison conditions, or, you're one of those people who just want to take a wrecking ball and knock the whole thing down, right? The shut 'em down demos opens up a place for abolitionists as a whole to come out and really amplify whatever causes that are aligned and tied in with abolition. So I just kind of wanted to make that clear too, that although you will see a lot of boycotting commissary and 13th Amendment stuff within the shut 'em down demos, it's as a collective, a whole. And I think that's what JLS wanted to really kind of solidify when they say that they're embracing their diverse perspectives within their network. Because, you think about it as this like massive machine, and our job is to deconstruct and destroy it. Dismantling the prison industrial slave complex is to take it down. You can either, like I said, hit it with a wrecking ball for immediate impact, or you can meticulously sort of deconstruct it piece by piece by focusing on the 13th Amendment or the different pipelines. And that maybe the most effective approach also involves both methods simultaneously. And I think that's also an important message too, that it's not just, one or the other, but for everybody collectively to ensure comprehensive and lasting transformation.
Yeah, just getting rid of the building doesn't get rid of the relationship that is incarceration in its specific form in this country. And circling back, I guess, to the question about communication, like obviously JLS has its communication, and lots of comrades who aren't JLS are still like going to be forwarding that call behind bars. A lot of communication happens through illicit means, and that's how people can avoid administrations knowing about all the plans. But when we're communicating with folks behind bars, like the letters are getting scanned, they're getting searched for keywords. The audio can be recorded from phone calls. It could be like search for keywords, even visits. And would you all mind saying a thing about like what is a safe approach to having a conversation with someone who's incarcerated in a way where it's not going to inadvertently get them put onto some sort of watch list just because you decide that you want to like raise information about this thing that other people are doing? Is there a safe way to do it?
That's a great question. I have JLS kind of on this message thing right now, so I just posed that to them. So it'll probably take like just a few seconds for them to get back if they have specifics. Okay, so coming from the inside, they're saying that there really is no foolproof, safe way other than, person-to-person visits, that sort of thing, which is why I guess it's so important, again, for us on the outside to share as much as we can. And they say just pass the info along as best as you can to your contacts on the inside.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know that like one of the, anyway, I don't have to go into it. People find really, really ingenious ways of getting information between the bars.
Absolutely.
Gotta say that. What is a movement without imagination? Yeah, so I mean, that's the questions that I had. You've already named some websites, but any social media accounts or websites that specifically people should be paying attention to in the build-up and who they can communicate with if they want to share their actions moving forward?
Yeah, so I just wanted to share that our website is incarceratedworkers.org. You can also follow our Instagram at Incarcerated Workers.
People can follow Jailhouse Lawyers Speak on Twitter at JLS Speak. They can also follow them on Instagram. People can also follow JLS on Instagram at jailhouse_lawyers_speak. And again, they can also go to jailhouselawyersspeak.com. And from there, there's links to the JLS Housing Center, which would be jlshousingcenter.com if they wanted to go directly there. For Sundiata Jawanza's Freedom Campaign, they can go to sundiatajawanza.com. They can also go to thejerichomovement.com, who they're supporting his freedom campaign as well under their political prisoners.
Yeah, Rock and Courtney, thank you so much for this conversation. Were there any parting words that you wanted to say? Anything that I forgot to ask about that you want the listeners to hear?
Yeah, I did actually. There's been a quote that's been running through my mind as I've been seeing year after year, we've been descending into fascism. And it is a quote by Assata Shakur. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. And that's all.
And I'll just read a quick insert from Jailhouse Lawyers Speak, who says, "Remember, our struggle is not about prison reform, but abolition. We seek to dismantle the systems of oppression and build a more just society for all." And to thank everybody for listening and supporting their ongoing causes.
Awesome. And thank you to them for engaging, and thank you to both of you for being a part of this conversation. Much appreciated.
Thanks.
Thank you.
The Final Straw is a proud member of the Channel Zero network of anarchist podcasts, and here's a jingle from another member of CZN.
Welcome to Molotov Now, a podcast about taking action.
In Molotov Now, we analyze and discuss news articles and stories of resistance from around the globe and connect them to our struggles here at home in Aberdeen, Washington.
In the spirit of building solidarity between the rural and the urban, we hope to inspire direct action in the face of oppression and to light a fire to find each other in the darkness.
If you want to support the Final Straw Radio, you can subscribe to our podcast via various platforms, follow, rate, and share our materials online, and learn more at tfsr.wtf. And if you'd like to fund our transcription work that allows for easier translation, more accessibility of content, and the zines that we produce from each interview, consider picking up some merch from us or making a one-time or recurring donation via PayPal, Venmo, Stripe, or LibraPay. Or joining our Patreon to access early release content and other goodies via the links that you can find at tfsr.wtf/support.
This is Monsour Owolabi, new active political prisoner, currently confined in Texas for life without parole. A little bit about myself, introduce myself. I came into radical politics generally, although being exposed to racism and systematic oppression, national oppression, etc. As a child, growing up in Texas, I would say I came full circle and a more complete awareness of radical politics and organizing through the constant in-your-face racism and oppression that comes with the territory of prison, right? So my analysis of things were derived from being at the lowest of the low as far as in the prison population, I've spent most of my time, I've been locked up now 14 years, and I've spent most of that time, about a decade or so, in solitary confinement at the worst levels of solitary confinement you can be on. And so it just so happened where I happened to be was one of the most racist prison regimes in the state of Texas, right? And so anywhere from a lot of the prisoners to the officers and the main administrators were in cahoots, and things just, although, you know, you become a little bit aware growing up about the racial components of the country, you know, it's different when it's in your face all day, every day, and you're the target of it, right? And so that, along being around some good people, grabbed me and took a hold of me, man, and took the time to give me good books and educate me, man, and that kind of brought me into the fold more or less. And then as I began to actually clash with the state, trying, you know, like most people, simply get humane treatment, simply have international human rights recognized, and, you know, with the state doing what it's supposed to do and its role as far as preventing that from happening, that only up the ante as far as my level of radicalization and politicalization, right? I see as you organize, and even the most successful organizing against the state, usually in most cases simply increases one's radicalization, right? So that's a little bit about me. As far as what I have going on right now, a number of things, but I'm currently in the midst of a statewide fight inside and out to try to tear down the walls of solitary confinement. As I see it, solitary confinement is the political tool in the hands of the state to, number one, it's the ultimate sense of behavior modification tools, right? Okay, so what usually happens is you get these influential prisoners, right? And the most influential, and you throw them in these cells and you isolate them in all types of inhumane conditions, right? You know, Texas is one of the things it's known for is heat, humidity, right? So you throw them in these cells with all this Texas heat and you lock them away, right? There's no air conditioning. There's no good source of water supply. You know what I mean? Even the water's contaminated here where I'm at the Ferguson Unit. Okay? People are getting sick. I've been sick multiple times, throwing up viruses, etc., from water, from the contamination of the water, right? And you know, I don't want to go on and on about that, but that is the condition. So you spend years and years and decades, and the majority of these people, the best of our leaders, spend years and decades, and some of them even die, you know, in these conditions, and it's perpetuated because of these conditions, right? So, but this is a tactic used to counter-insurgency and behavior modification. So, although not everyone within the United Front against solitary confinement in Texas and otherwise are as radicalized, politicalized, revolutionary as myself and others, I feel that we as radicals, right, by various stripes, have to not only join in the fight against solitary confinement, but try to hold a leading influence in it, right? Because a lot of times we pick and choose on the struggles we want to jump in, and that's cool. We have to do that to a degree. But sometimes we have to jump into things head first, right? Because at the end of the day, it's the class struggle, right? And the class struggle expresses itself through the movement of the people, right? So the movement against solitary confinement, is a grassroots movement, at least how it's expressing itself in Texas, right? So you got a bunch of normal, quote unquote, normal people. I mean, we are normal, but you know what I mean? Normal people, you know, they see this outrage and it's a moral thing for them. So with us being who we are, okay, it's a moral thing, but it's more so as we see it as a political thing as well, right? And so we have to bring that analysis to the people, you know what I'm saying, and also struggle for a big chunk of the influence on the direction of the movement. If not, what usually happens is you have what's called an elite capture, right? So elites and people that have this access, right? This access to resources, etc., education, all these different things, like they consciously or unconsciously tend to steer the wheel of the various movements, right? So, and what happens is that almost invariably, what happens is that waters down the goals and aspirations of the grassroots movement, right? So in order to prevent that, we have to ingratiate ourselves with grassroots movement and see to it that those grassroots aspirations are being followed through. So that's something that I'm doing right now. I encourage people to check out TexasLetters.org.
TexasLetters.org.
My writings on that subject. Yes, sir. TexasLetters.org. You'll see some of my writings on the subject. Currently, a book release tour going around the state of Texas. We just had the launch this past Sunday, May 19th, and so that's doing pretty good. And people coming out, getting these books, being educated on the issue of solitary confinement in Texas, as well as oppression inside Texas prisons more generally. And they're coming in to these events and getting workshops going on, being educated by different sectors within the movement. And so that's something I'm doing now. Also, I've been remiss to include something that I'm trying to get off the ground right now. I'm trying to galvanize people around the country, various stripes. We're looking to set up a working group towards we want to bring, like Dr. and others talked about, bring the issues of the people to the international community, right? And we frequently lament, our opposition to the enemy state, right? And so, however, we get caught in this routine of it's almost as we're dependent upon them for the different resolutions and solutions that we need, right? And so a lot of that is not necessarily our fault. It's just to speak to our level of dependency and things like that in a state of neo-colonialism that goes on within the empire, right? But and so in order to get out of that bag, we have to get together. And I think that the prison movement, because the lines are more blurred as far as different barriers and things, I think that we can be in the forefront of taking international petition complaint to different international bodies, you know what I'm saying, expressing U.S. refusal to recognize international human rights and international treaties, right? And even more so than refusing to recognize them, they've gone out their way to create a safety net, for lack of a better word, to prevent them from being liable to respond to these treaties that they're signed. So ultimately, they're acting as watchdogs to other nations and people without liability in these same international treaty organizations and committees, right? So I want to educate the general public more about that. That's can't do all that in this one little setting, but educate the general public about that, as well as the prison movement as a whole. And I think that will politically that'll help galvanize us. That'll help. I'm a person that I like to blur the lines, knock down the walls between ideology, between ethnic groups, nationality, sexuality, religion, etc. Right? And I say, I feel that the prison movement can be a step forward in that, right? And so I believe that people on the outside it's what people can do, relevant things that people can do, impactful things that people can do on the outside to support the prison movement. It's the prison movement. It's international, it's national, but it's also very hyper local, right?
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is because of the setup of the empire, each state, really even each prison and jail itself is at different stages of development as far as its movement. Some places no movement at all. Some places the movement is high level, right? So we have to begin to understand that. So because that is what it is, we have to be able to tap into people like yourself that's been doing this prison support work and solidarity work for years. Because of the years and decades in the struggle, you would have more contacts on the inside than the average person. So it all begins right there. Contacts on the inside, and not just any contacts, but contacts that are have a track record of being active, right? Because sometimes people have this name and this reputation, but their activity is not frequent, right? Okay, right. So we need people that are active and involvement, right? Okay, boom. Those people at the local level can be able to tell people more or less what they need. But to give a better answer and less general, I would say a lot of things start with helping people transition to the outside, right? Okay, so
and that's been a real struggle. Like that can be a real struggle sometimes.
Exactly, and so if I had my wish, right, I would say that you know how the bourgeois prison reformers, right, they get these different grants and things like that and put them into transitional housing. Okay, I applaud the move, right, but it would be better if our comrades and things like that were able to put together even just a novel version of that construct right there, right? Okay.
The transitional housing idea?
What happens is transitional housing for particular politicized individuals, right?
Absolutely, so, and plus that way it helps them stay involved in the movement when they get out, and then there's absolutely. That's the whole purpose. That's the whole purpose, right? And that goes towards setting up welcoming communities, right? Because it's either two things happening. Number one, the politicized prisoner is a minority within the prison system anyway, right? So so you get out now, and you become basically a minority inside of an even bigger minority in the free world, right? Okay, right. And so maybe you know some people that are, into the reform movement and things like that. So maybe you might go that direction. But 9 times out of 10, what happens is you fall into either regular, getting a job and I'm going to school, et cetera, you get caught up in the ways of bourgeois life, right? Or you just fall off the wagon and you're on a fast track back to confinement, right? And so in order to stop that, you have to set up welcoming revolutionary communities, and it starts from maybe putting some resources to that revolutionary transitional housing, right? That's a good idea to work toward in the future. Also, for those on the inside, because sadly to say, at least in my experience, the majority of political and politicized prisoners have a lot of time, right? And so if nothing's done, they stay and we. I'm one of those people. Like I said, I have lifetime parole, so they and we will be here, right? So part of the support for these particular individuals, again, it starts with maintaining constant communication with these individuals, because life in prison is like, it's shaky, it's monotone, it's the same thing every day, but at the same time, things change suddenly, right? But so it starts there, but you have to be in a position to be willing to, number one, provide education material, because I believe the the most deeply rooted thing that political prisoners can do on the inside is politically educate the people around them, right? Change the culture, if you will, the prison culture around them, okay, and build up solid, disciplined revolutionaries that'll be able to come out and act as influences on the outside movement, right? Okay, because they have a certain level of discipline, certain level of experience and a pedigree that they've garnered from their time on the inside, and that has to be ignited and engineered by people like myself on the inside. So
absolutely.
A person like you on the outside, and you more or less do this, you know, through the initiatives that you have going on, right?
Right.
For others, you know, for others, right? Engineer make it easier for the political prisoners, provide them the tools and resources to do their job, right? And people like Monsour do our job by having a consensus on, hey, this is what our attention needs to be. Hey, it's not always about issue-oriented organizing work. Okay, sometimes we need to buckle down, sit in, and let's build up collectives right here. Let's just put our heads together, see who's who, what is what, who's willing to sit down and have study and struggle sessions, man. Take 6 months to a year out and just study, just build up your ideological capacity, right? And that's really it's boring work. It's not exciting. It's not sexy, but it's really the most important, right? Because that is what will carry us through when repression comes down and people on the outside now they come in, right? Okay. And those of us on the inside come out, right? This is to make sure we have a steady rotation of people that's always, holding our position in high esteem, right? Because like I said, we are a minority, so we constantly need human resources before we have any other resources, right? And we are constantly will be isolated by not only the state, but agents of the state within the masses of the people, right? So that tend to, for better or worse, consciously or unconsciously, their actions and omissions tend to isolate the more radical of us, right? But for better or worse, we just got to keep on pushing, man.
One thing I wanted to shout out before we stop the recording, that just your initial enthusiasm about us getting these regular writing events is really helpful, and we've been distributing especially a lot of that, drawing the connections between Palestine and American prisons piece that you wrote. So I just want to say on record, on recording, for people who get to hear this, thank you so much for writing that thing, and we'll have copies of it on the table so people can pick it up. And yeah, if you want to say one quick thing to everybody who's gathered, because we're going to play this on Sunday at the event we got. So if you want to do one quick shout out too.
Man, I just want to shout out to everybody, man, for coming out, to taking your time out to even give a damn, man, because a lot of people don't care about what's going on inside of here. So I would just thank all of you, appreciate all of you, man, and free Palestine, man, from the river to the sea. Palestine will be free, man. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, thanks a lot, dude. Thank you so much for doing this.
And now some words from anarchist prisoner Sean Swain.
A lawsuit I wrote up is probably going to be filed this upcoming week. It's captioned, Sean Swain versus DJ Norris. DJ is the head of the security threat group monitoring, which means he's kind of like the top dog of the prison gang police. DJ has put me on the gang list for being an anarchist. It's all in capital letters, by the way, like the word is being yelled in your face. It's not anarchist, really. It's more anarchist. I've been going round and round with DJ's minions, and I put off actually suing them, as I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. It's been my hope that they're not just being deliberately evil thought police, but that they're just not understanding me, that they're suffering some kind of congenital idiocy. It's looking more and more to me like it's the deliberately evil thought police thing. Of course, it could be both. It's probably both. Here's my problem. Fart goblins like DJ are holding me captive at gunpoint. So whether I like it or not, they can control my conduct. My conduct. What I do. They can command that I stay inside of the fence, and I have to do that. If I try to get to the outside of the fence without permission, they'll stop me, rudely and violently. My compliance to their orders is both expected and enforceable. Same goes with anything else. If they say do it, I have to do it. If they say stop, I have to stop. They've got Apache attack helicopters. I don't. So they give the orders and I follow them. I may not like it, but I have to do it. Conduct. In fact, if I break the rules, the form that the fart goblins fill out is a conduct report. Conduct. You know why? Because fart goblins regulate what we do. But DJ doesn't have me on the gang list for what I do. I don't do anything. I'm not organizing uprisings. I'm not coordinating resistance. I'm not wiring up bombs or throwing Molotov cocktails. No. He's got me on the list for what I think, what I know, what I believe. I know government doesn't work. I don't believe that to be true. I know it. I can see it. For the last 8,000 years, government has never worked as advertised. Never. The promises have always been far better than the performance. And in 8,000 years, government has not gotten better at managing our lives for us. It's provably gotten worse. Our current reality makes Game of Thrones look like the West Wing. I accept the truth of the provable statement. Government doesn't work. And so, DJ put me on a gang list. Anarchist! I've tried to explain the folly of this to the fart goblins. But when I explain myself, their eyes glaze over and their mouths fall open. And it reminds me of cows with half-chewed cud staring at a passing train. Either they don't understand, or else they don't care. Or both. Probably both. So here's the folly. My thoughts are in my mind. And my mind is a deep, dark, cavernous place where even former President Jimmy Carter wouldn't go. And he's a nuclear engineer, you know. I've got lots of thoughts in there. They're my thoughts. I'm entitled to those thoughts, whether those thoughts are good or bad, whether DJ likes them or hates them. And by the way, I know some of DJ's thoughts. He's told me his thoughts. His thoughts suck. His thoughts make my thoughts look like rock stars. So, at any rate, I have to take issue with anyone assuming the authority to regulate thoughts. But I especially take issue with someone like DJ, a right-wing extremist and state terrorist whose thoughts are dangerous, appointing himself my personal thought cop. Everyone else on the prison gang list is on there for what they do. I'm on there for what I think. Or, more accurately, what DJ thinks I think. I think government doesn't work. In fact, I know government doesn't work. That makes me an anarchist. And so, for what I know, I'm put on a list. I've had this discussion with DJ's minions. I've told them that I know the earth is round. What gang does that put me in? I know gravity works. What gang does that put me in? I thought maybe my thoughts would put me in the Copernicans or the Galileans. But no. I'm allowed to know the earth is round. That knowledge doesn't make me a gang member. But if I know government doesn't work, anarchist, straight to the gang list. It seems that only the knowledge that annoys DJ and other fart goblins gets you stuck on a list. When they agree with you, you're fine. When they disagree, you're a gang member. The obligation, it seems, is to only know exactly what DJ knows. If you know something he doesn't know, you're a gang member. So, to get off the gang list, I'm going to have to get a lot dumber. I've had personal interactions with DJ. He's pretty dumb. For me to get that dumb, I'm probably going to have to take several hard blows to the head with some serious lumber. Or we're going to need some power tools. I don't know. Based on the nonsense I've heard pouring out of DJ's pie hole, he doesn't use his head for anything other than a hat rack. I'll have to be in a coma to get off the gang list. And another thing, if knowing government doesn't work will get you on the gang list, then shouldn't it also put you on the gang list if you believe government does work? If it's gang-worthy to be an anarchist, all capital letters, then shouldn't it be gang-worthy to be a hierarchist? DJ, Grand Poobah of the hierarchists, says no. Of course, hierarchists are not just a gang, but are the most dangerous gang in history. Hierarchists rule the world and do it badly. They've started every war, plotted every invasion, ruined our world in their quest to maintain power and control. It's like they're infected with an ideological disease. But DJ doesn't monitor them because he is them. Hopefully when this case goes to court, he'll soon be out of a job. And he should be. He's a hierarch extremist and an ideological bigot. You can feel free to send this audio to his boss, ODRC Director Annette Chambers-Smith, so she knows what kind of clown show DJ's running and why she just got sued along with him. Her email is annette.chambers-smith@odrc.state.oh.us. You can also share this with the Attorney General defending them. His email is daniel.mckitrick@ohioago.gov. McKittrick is spelled M-C-K-I-T-R-I-C-K. That office's phone number is 614-644-7233, and the fax number, just in case you want to send interesting stuff, is 866-359-3383. I would recommend you only contact them during business hours. And once this action is filed, you can probably share this with the judge, too. I'm sure he'll love it. This is anarchist prisoner Sean Swain at the Super Duper Uber Mega Ultra Hyper Turbo Multi Maxi Max in Youngstown, Ohio. If you're listening, you are the resistance.
You can still write Sean at his new old new again address at Sean Swain number A243205 OSP Youngstown 878 Coitesville Hubbard Road, Youngstown, Ohio 44505. You can find his past writings, updates on his case, hear his past audio, find out how to get his books, plus ways to contribute to his legal defense fund at seanswain.org. This is The Final Straw Radio. The show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, and you can email us with questions and suggestions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net or thefinalstrawradio@protonmail.com. If you'd like to use any episode for your project or radio show, feel free to do so. Just send us an email to let us know. If you care to, you can send us letters at TFSR, P.O. Box 6004, Asheville, North Carolina, 28816. Programming support is brought to you by Firestorm Books. Located at 1022 Haywood Road in West Asheville, Firestorm is a bookstore and social movement space owned by its workers, in operation since 2008. Their event calendar and complete catalog of books can be found online at firestorm.coop.